Welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking a little bit about working from home and setting boundaries.
Oh, yeah. Because this is just, it may be not increasingly common since it's been a few years since everything shut down, but work from home has become such a selling point for jobs nowadays, right? You're talking to recruiters, you're looking for jobs, and if it's a work from home job, there are significant benefits to that. But I think what a lot of us realized in 2020 when we were kind of forced to work from home was that we didn't realize what kinds of downsides there would be to the role. And so what I found is that people absolutely love, and there's probably like a honeymoon phase with working from home of, oh my gosh, I don't have to get dressed. I don't have to put makeup on. I don't have to get my nails done. I don't have to wear dress clothes. I don't have to commute to work. I don't have to go out for lunch, all these things. But a lot of those things that are self-care related have translated to negative outcomes over the long haul of working from home for a long period of time and never setting those routines. So people end up in a position where they wake up 10 minutes before their first meeting, they roll out of bed, and with their camera off, they just kind of try to skirt by through the meeting while they're making their cup of coffee. And then they are basically just a slave to their computer all day. And then they're wiped and tired. They haven't moved or taken any steps throughout the day. And they are logging off 5, 6, 7, 8 p.m. or maybe even later because there's no boundary. So they can work as long as they want because they're taking it home with them. And all of a sudden you're burnt out, you've gained weight, and you're really frustrated with your whole situation. This is very, very common. And I honestly am still talking to women now who are trying to get their fitness back in check post COVID times now. And it's literally 4 years later. No shame on them. No one teaches us this stuff, but it's just that is how much it's affected people up to this point.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about a client in particular where it was like, you don't realize all the things that you do in your day to day, like if you're commuting to work and everything like that. So if you think about it, it's like, okay, you're getting up, you're moving around the house, you're getting ready, you walk out the door, you drive to work, but then you got to walk into the building, you got to walk wherever you're going, you walk here to there, you're walking around in between, going to get lunch, and then you come home. And when you're just rolling to your computer 10 minutes before you get up, it's super easy to be like, oh my God, I've only gotten 500 steps today. Especially if you live in a tiny apartment. It's like that movement can make a huge difference in your metabolism. And, it's not that big of a deal. Like, let's say you're sick and you got to work from home for a day or two. That's not going to make a huge difference. But over a week, and that turns into months, and that turns into a year to 2 years, that can be really, really, really damaging.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, the topic today is boundaries for working from home, but this is really, the groundwork to your routines. And so think of this as, how are you setting up your life? And so work from home might seem like this convenient luxury, but if you're not taking care of yourself and your routines through it, then you can absolutely end up like that scenario that I just painted that's not so pretty, right? And unfortunately, it's a lot of people's realities of they have been stuck in this work from home rut for years and they don't know how to get out because no one has taught us how to effectively work from home. Only now are people like us and articles online and things trying to educate around it. And so I feel like I kind of lucked out in a way because as you know, Christina, this is the only real job that I've ever had. I've had a couple side jobs here and there, but this is all I've done. So working from my laptop and being at home has been my whole thing, which is why I've kind of centered my business around that demographic. But I realized in 2020 when all of my clients, I had a full roster of clients at the time, everything shut down. I started writing home workouts for people, all this stuff. And I started to realize that it's not normal to just have your routine down for work from home. And I was like, oh, it's easy or whatever. And people were like, how do you do it? This is insanely hard. And I had to kind of have a moment where I looked in the mirror and realized when 2020 came around, I had been doing it for 4 years, the work from home thing. So I had 4 years of trial and error to slowly figure out my groove, whereas all these other people just got thrown into it. And so, no shit that it's going to be harder. So, that was for me a great teaching moment of like, okay, now what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And how has that affected my ability to be productive? And it's always a work in progress, still something that I'm working on today and has changed from 6 months ago. But I think you and I are probably both really excited to share, like, we do this full time. We've been doing it for a while, just kind of sharing our wisdom of how do we set up our day from home to be successful.
Yeah. And I think that one of the big challenges that we talk about is like, again, 2020 was a was a really weird year for a lot of
Yeah.
people. And it was like a lot of companies that didn't have work from home model are now trying to pivot. And so the company's trying to figure out what to do. So there was just like a lot of unknown. And then it was like, are we doing this for a week? Are we doing this for a month? Like, oh,
Yeah.
this is the entire year. And like I know that everyone's company was different, but I think that one of the big challenges from working from home is that blurred line between what is personal and what is work, because most people would get up, leave their house, go to work, work was work, and they'd come home and they had this like physical change of environment that's kind of signified like, okay, I am no longer in work mode. I'm shutting off. I have this like decompression time, whether it's going to the gym or coming home, whatever that may be. And we never like no longer had that. So I would say that I don't want to jump like straight into like the tactics of things, but like the people who would literally wake up and have their office in their bedroom, like I felt like, oh, that's really, really hard because we want the bedroom to be like we're only sleeping and doing some other extracurricular activities in this room.
Yeah.
And we don't want work into there as well. So moving your work area out of the bedroom, I think is really, really important. That will help a little bit with that like distinction, and then trying to like stay in as routine as possible. I think that that's really helpful. So I know that again, 2020 for me, I was like, sweet. Like I love working from home. I don't have an hour commute anymore. Like I don't need to get dressed up. Like it was fantastic. And then for my coworker, we used to share an office. She struggled really hard because she was very social and she loved being able to get dressed up and see other people. And she kind of felt like a bum all day if she stayed in PJs. And so for her, she needed to get dressed. And that was really, really important for her to feel like she was at work. So that's another thing too. It's like, okay, not only am I moving work out of my bedroom, but like I'm dressing the part. And so that can really help as well because it's like signaling to your brain, like, okay, I'm in work mode. And then once I take these off, I'm no longer in work mode. And now I'm back at home and I can do whatever. So I feel like having that, whatever that might be for you, just like that either physical change of environment and like physically changing your clothes, that can really help with disconnecting from work because I know that can be really, really hard when your laptop is there, your phone is there, and like anyone can access you at any point in time.
Yeah. Well, I think the global kind of like lesson from that is like one of the most important principles about creating these lines between work and home is that if we don't have effective lines drawn between our home life and our work life, like Christina explained, you come home from work and commuting and you kind of can like, I don't want to say this in like a negative way, but like you can kind of be two different people, right? There's like work Marissa versus home Marissa, or like, you might have different identities, like you as a mom or a dad or a parent, you might come home and put on that hat, but when you're at work, you're corporate professional, Susie, right? And so I think it's important that when you realize when you work from home and maybe all those lines have blurred, you're kind of the reason why a lot of people struggle mentally with that change is because of the lines blurring between identities. Like now they're just everything's together and your work identity becomes your identity because there is no boundary. People can access you at all times. And that's where a lot of the burnout with work from home has come from, of like feeling like you're working all the time, feeling like your work is your identity because you have not made those distinctions. And so there are physical and mental things that you can do to better draw those lines in the sand. So, like Christina said, a physical one would be your work environment at home, like designating it to a specific room if you have an office, or at least taking it out of areas that it shouldn't be in. and having a specific workstation or area is really key. But also the mental side, like I would even argue that this is tactical, but it's also more mental, like getting dressed for your day when working from home is more of a mental, like, let me get myself into my persona of my work self. And then I can mentally check in. And then when I'm done with work, I'm doing this physical thing where I walk out of my office, I change my environment, I close the door, I close the laptop, anything to physically signal the end and the beginning of the day. And then maybe I'm like wiping my makeup off and I change into sweats and like I become my mom persona, my home persona, my wife persona, whatever it is. And I think that that's really, it sounds kind of cheesy when I say it out loud, but it's so important to have those distinctions. And so if you don't have that, what you find is that you're like watching TV and scrolling on Slack, answering people's questions at 10 p.m. And you are in your lounge clothes, but you're mentally not lounging. And that's how you get burnt out. And so it's really important to have, I think the biggest thing is like a startup routine and a shutdown routine to your work from home day that includes environmental cues, spatial cues, as well as like mental like labeling cues. And there's different ways you can do that, even if you don't have an office or even if you like don't have a great routine down, like just little things can make a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that you're kind of talking about is like, okay, when we're trying to wear multiple hats at the same time, especially as a parent, it's hard to parent and also be thinking about work and like trying to do all these things. And so we kind of feel like we're not doing well at like everything. And so it's nice when you're able to, and I know it's very different as a parent, especially when you're working from home. If you got your kids from home, very, very, very difficult to do, especially if you don't have childcare. Speaking 100% from experience, as I'm like watching my kid pull his pants down, and I'm like, I need to change his diaper. He's running around outside. But it's really hard when you're trying to work, but you're parenting, or you're parenting and you're thinking about work. You're just not 100% present with where you're at, and that can lead to feeling like you're not as effective, or you can't think as well, or so it just affects like a lot of areas of your life. So I know that that is definitely a factor for my work from home clients who were like, I cannot shut my brain off and stop thinking about work, because
Yeah.
it's again, it's like that they don't have the end of the day routine, they don't have that commute home, they don't have like, I'm going to hit the gym, because a lot of times, especially in COVID, like we couldn't, so we had to work out from home. So it was like our home was our office, it was our gym, it was our home life, and so all those boundaries were really really blurred. So I love the idea of like the physical cues, and that helps us mentally as well, and allows us to feel a little bit more present. So
Yeah.
um, I guess maybe there are things that we can talk about as far as like what we can do ourselves, and then what those boundaries are with work. Like, you know what I mean? It's like like telling work, hey, these are my boundaries, versus like these are things that I can control, that I can do.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
feel like those are different distinctions.
Yeah, actually, I was on a podcast interview a couple weeks ago and they were asking me that, like, when you have like your lunch hour blocked off on your work calendar and you go get your workout in during your lunch hour, like, do you tell them? Do you not? Do you just leave it? And like, my take is like, they don't need to know, right? If you're entitled to that lunch hour, block that shit off. You're not telling them anything. I'm not available at this time, period. That is the whole sentence. You do not need to explain yourself. You're just not available. And then basically from there, like, there, and also like if you're doing something for your health or you have like a doctor's appointment or something, I'm pretty sure it's like a violation of HIPAA rights to ask like, what are you doing with your health or something like that. I don't know, I've heard that before, but yeah, so basically like, don't feel the need to explain yourself. Like, you, if you're entitled to your time off, then it's your time off, especially if you're contracted to be within certain hours, or if your job is more the type of like, if as long as your targets are met, as long as you're doing what you need to be doing, then you can be on or off whenever you want. Then like, definitely don't explain yourself, especially if you're getting your shit done. If you're not getting your stuff done, then obviously you need to figure that out. But like, assuming that you're getting all your work done and you're in good standing and you want to take that time for yourself, like, you absolutely should, and you do not need to feel the need to justify yourself. And that comes down to like respecting your own time, right? Of like, I deserve that and I don't need to be a slave to this laptop or stuck at my desk all day. I think when you come from the commuting 9 to 5 like mentality, it can feel really like compelling to like, I have to sit at my desk for 8 hours for it to count. But like, what are the actual requirements of your role? Like, are you a role that actually has to sit and be available for those hours? And if so, I feel for you. But if not, and you're actually subjecting yourself to that without any real reason other than that's just what everyone else does and that's the culture that we have, or that's just what you've always done, question that. Like, see, do you have more freedoms within that to meet the expectations of your role, but also be able to kind of just be flexible, whether that's to do the dishes or get your workout in or meal prep or cook a lunch. Like, you should not be at your desk so much that you can't get up to pee, or you can't eat lunch, or you can't have a snack, or you can't do these things. And actually, like, I've had personal experience with leading people who have struggled with this. Like, some of my team members have felt like I can't get up to pee. I can't do these things. I can't get up from my desk. And like, I mean, I'm sure the permission helps of me being like, yo, what? Like,
Yeah.
dude, go eat. But
Yeah.
but it's typically when you are very like high performing professional, people pleaser, don't want to disappoint anyone, always want to be on top of your game and over deliver, it's typically self-imposed pressure that's coming from, I have to do it this way, I have to give my all, I cannot leave anything on the table, when really it's like you're actually way less effective when you do it that way. If you just took the
It's
damn break, like, you'd be more effective.
It's really funny that you say this because I just sent this to one of my clients where it's like a conversation between two workers, and it's like someone's like, so we've noticed that you sign on at 9, right at 9, and you leave right at 5. And she's like, yes, those are my contracted hours. And it's like, well, you're setting the precedence that you like won't work any later and like your coworkers do. And like when that comes up for promotion, like we're going to remember that. And like you probably won't be considered. And she was like, or I will be the only one considered because I am effective with my work hours and I can get my stuff done between 9 and 5. And if anyone else would like some more information on how they can get their job done during their working hours, I'd be more than happy to help. And
Nice.
then the other person doesn't say anything because they're like, what the fuck? And she's like, okay, well, it's 5 o'clock. Like, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's 100% how I was as an employee because I was like, you are not paying me for any longer. Yes, of course, if we have like an extracurricular activity and like I'm needed and I need to be there, once in a blue moon type thing. But other than that, like I'm not staying, I'm not working. Like I'm going home, like I'm not getting paid for this. And I know that because this has happened to me. I would say yes, I would, and they'd be like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? And all of a sudden I was doing everything. And I'm like, this is not fair for the other person who does jet out at 4 and they don't get asked to do anything at all because they know that their answer is no. And I think that this is really difficult if you've been working somewhere for a long time, then to set boundaries can
Yeah,
be
and that's
very
become
difficult.
your reality, like, you're already in it.
Right.
And then now you're trying to take a step back from it. That's even
Hmm.
harder.
That's really
Um,
hard.
yeah, but it's never too late at the same time. Like, I'm not saying that it's easy. Like, it's definitely easier said than done, but it is possible. And I think it's just baby steps from there. Like, um, just being able to like draw, and I think too, it's like it's proving to yourself that you can do that and not have like these crazy repercussions. And you can't control other people, so if people blow up on you, like, that sucks that like you're just around people that can't like take that sort of feedback. But it's like a lot of times we're almost too scared to even try, right? And so it's like there are probably more circumstances than not that if you asked or set the boundary or drew the line and didn't explain yourself, that like the other person would just be like, okay, cool, I'll go ask someone else, right?
Yeah.
But you're too afraid of what their reaction might be to ask because you've never said no before. And that, my friend, is something that you need to work on. Not you,
Yeah,
Christina,
that's
but the listener.
no, that's really funny because I had one of my coaches. I asked her, I'm like, hey, are you available for a call at this time? And she was like, no, I'm not. Like I don't, I stop working at a certain time. And I was like, cool. All right, what about tomorrow? And it's funny because she went on to her story and was like talking about boundaries and everything. And I was like, oh no. Like, I asked you, she's like, no, no, no. That just made me think it's like my other job, like, that thing. But she was like, but yeah, your response was, yeah, it's cool. And I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, it was. I just asked you, like, and I wasn't asking for you to say yes. It's like, are you available? If you're not, we'll find another time. And that's totally fine.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it's just really like you gotta if you've never even tried setting a boundary before because you've been too scared, you gotta work on that because once you do it, it's like exposure therapy. You do it once or twice and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
what happens if I do it again? What happens if I do it more? And I'm sure there's, the opposite extreme of like setting too many boundaries or something to where like, I don't know, you're not getting anything done. But like most of the time, I'm gonna just go on a limb and say all the people that listen to this probably veer more on the side of people pleasing and struggling to set those boundaries, struggling to make the time for themselves. And let's just like kind of the consequences of not doing this. If you don't set these boundaries, if you don't create these systems or routines in your life, what happens is you're going to end up resenting the people that you work with and the work that you do. I've actually been in the not receiving end of this, but like I've actually been there too, like where I've resented things and I've been burnt out and I've hated everything because I felt like I was giving all my time away and not getting any return on it. But that was actually my own fault, like not setting boundaries, doing a bunch of stuff on the weekends. Like there's just a line. I think that line can always change depending on the season that you're in, but don't let
Mhm.
it's a busy season allow you to justify consistent stepping over your boundaries. Because if you don't have any, then like it's not just a season. That's just you don't have any boundaries.
Yeah. So I like the idea of baby steps because it's like, okay, maybe you are that person who is like a people pleaser. You've never implemented them. You've been working at your job for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and you are the
Or 20
person who's,
years.
yeah, or 20, and you're that yes man, right? Or yes woman. Like everyone knows that like you're gonna do it. So like for you, you like an hour long lunch break where you don't tell anyone where you are going, like might seem really, really scary. So maybe what you do is like you schedule in like dedicated working hours, or you just start taking like regular breaks, like every hour I get up and like I'm giving myself permission to go to the bathroom and like fill up my water bottle, or go taking like a 5 minute walk or whatever that may be, or I mean like whatever that may be, or you give yourself like a 15-minute lunch, like just starting really, really slow and kind of building from there and seeing like, okay, what were the consequences? Did anything happen? No, everything was fine. I'm still able to get my work done. And so it's like, okay, cool. Like maybe the next thing I do is I establish like I have this like communication with my colleagues, like, hey, from Monday and Fridays from 12 to 12:30, I will be at lunch and I will not be available for meetings, and I will not be available like whatever, and I will respond back to you after this time. And again, kind of see what happens and go from there. And I feel like kind of like that can kind of bleed into other things where maybe now you have like notifications on your email. So like if someone sends you an email after hours, that doesn't mean that you have to reply after hours. It's like, hey, I'll get back to you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., like
Yeah.
during my working hours or something like that. I think that that's really important, especially having that communication.
Oh yeah. And by the way, don't have your email on your phone. Like just don't. Like don't have your email on your phone. If you have work, like if you are especially if you don't own your own business. Like if you own your own business, I get kind of like having everything available. But even I took Slack off my phone and I only put it back on when I'm traveling. Because when I'm traveling, I'm typically a little bit more flexible with when and how I'm working. Um, but literally like email's not on my phone, hasn't been on my phone for probably a year and a half now, at least. Because what I would do is I would anxiety check like, and if you're somebody who, especially if you're just like contracted to work for someone or you're salaried and you've been at the same company for 5 years and it's a very like corporate standard thing, dude, take your email off your phone because there's no reason to check other than when you're at your computer. And ultimately I think this is kind of the same thing with food and nutrition. Like the whole out of sight, out of mind thing with like, don't keep certain foods in the house. And ultimately like we do preach flexibility and having the foods that we love. But at the same time, I think it's important to, if you have specific goals and there are things that make reaching those goals harder in terms of the foods that you keep in your house, you also don't have to keep those foods in your house if it makes it harder for you and you're constantly exerting willpower and feeling like you're saying no to this thing. Versus if it just wasn't there in the first place, your life is a lot easier because you're one less decision away from, falling off track of your targets. So there's seasons for everything. And I think having your email on your phone is just like that. It's a lot easier to not check your email and set a boundary with work if your email is not on your phone and it's off when you shut your laptop down, right? Like that's so much easier.
Yeah. And my job was a little different when I was working in the schools than it is now. But like, I was very much like, I set the precedence that like, I am not responding after hours, because if something happened, if an email came in and I had set the precedence that I am available, then I would be liable for that. So it was like it was a very easy, like, okay, cool. Yeah. I'm not checking. Like once I leave, that is it. Like you
Yeah.
can call the school or you can get in contact with someone else, but like, I'm not liable for that. But my husband, like I am like a Enneagram like 3-1, right? So I'm very, again, like high performing. And so we would be sitting there and it's very difficult for me to like sit and enjoy a show. Like I don't feel productive. I feel like I'm wasting time, especially if it's like a movie we've already watched. I'm like, I've seen this. I know how it ends. I don't want to sit through this. Like, so he pointed this out to me. He was like, you will sit there and refresh your email, or you'll check Instagram and you refresh like notifications. And he's like, almost like you're searching for work.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, yeah, I do that. Like I'm like,
Wrong.
yeah, what, not even something to do wrong, but like, what can I work on right now? What can I be productive? And so, I mean, it's even like now when I like am going to bed before, like we'll read a little bit and like, it needs to be like something that is productive and something that I can use for work. Like, I don't really remember the last time, and sorry, my, son is playing with cars on my walking pad under my desk right now. Um, but like I just like everything needs to feel productive, and I don't remember the last time I even read for just like fun or pleasure.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, just very, very, very different. But I am the same as you now. I don't really check my email anymore very much during the day because like it's just not worth it. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever can wait until the morning.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, especially, right? Like we're talking as like two business owners who are obsessed with what we do. We love what we do. Like if you don't even like your job and it just pays the bills, like take that off your fucking phone.
Yeah.
Like please. Um,
Yes.
and just let that be that. And I think a lot of the boundary thing comes down to the guilt that we place upon ourselves for like whether it's the work culture that you're in, like you don't have to be a part of that if the culture is very like there's no boundaries, we're always on, we're always talking to each other, like that's not healthy. Let's not do that. And you can go against the grain and still get everything done, especially if those lack of boundaries are affecting you negatively in terms of your productivity and your focus. Then setting those boundaries will actually make you more productive in the hours that you have. And there's a common saying or phrase that goes around every so often in entrepreneurship, leadership. When you set meetings with people, they will take the time that has been allotted for the meeting, no matter how long it is. So if you have 3 things to talk about, but you've set a 60-minute meeting, you and that person will find a way to talk about those 3 things for 60 minutes. Or if you allot a 30-minute time slot, you could probably get through all 3 of those things in 30 minutes. And so same goes for like your work schedule or like the things that you have to do. Like if you compress your time a little bit, you will actually end up being a little bit more productive. I think there's a sweet spot with that of like there is such thing as too short or too little of like certain things do take time to work on. But like take that as don't just leave your entire 8-hour day open of like, okay, I'm going to get this one thing done in 8 hours. Then you will procrastinate, you will distract yourself, you will basically kind of twiddle your thumbs without getting it done. Versus if you said, I'm going to spend the next 60 minutes on this one thing. And then when 60 minutes is over, I'm going to take a break or switch to something else or walk away from the computer. And however far I get, I get. I promise you with the latter, you're going to have gotten more done by the end of 60 minutes than 60 minutes with the other strategy.
Yeah, I love the idea of setting a timer. And you can even do this with like chores around your house. Like, I'm just going to give myself 20 minutes and I'm going to try to get as much as I possibly can done during this time. And then after that, cool, I'm done and I can take a break or do whatever. But I love time blocking and I love the idea of setting timers because, yeah, exactly what you said. It's like, I have all day to send this one email and I'm going to take all day to do it versus like, let's just 5 minutes get it done and then what else can I do. And then I used to be this person where like on my to-do list, we've talked about these before, where I write down like whatever my task is for the day, and it was difficult for me because I'm like, well, I can't check it off because it's not done. And if it's like a big project, like I can't get it done in one day. So I'd be like, spend 60 minutes doing XYZ
Yeah.
or work on this. And then I could check it off because it's like, okay, yes, I did it. I'm still feeling productive because I get to check it off and I did it versus like, okay, it has to be complete. And so that was a really, really big game changer for me. And I love the setting of the times.
Yeah. And I think, this might sound a little off topic of like, what are the boundaries of my work versus my life, but how you manage your time in your day also affects how much time you have outside of your work day. And especially, maybe there's types of roles where you're contracted to be on for specific hours, and that's fine. That is what it is. But if it's project based and it's like, get these amounts of things done, the statistic, there's a bunch of different comparisons that go around, like Europe versus the US, and like they have a 4-day work week with 3-hour lunch breaks in France, and and they're, just as productive or whatever. Or the idea that or something that I've heard too is like in the corporate America, like the average amount of time that people actually spend working per week is like 1 to 2 hours per day, even though they're at
Yeah.
the office for 8 hours. So, like, if you really think about that, the things that we have to do not take more time, they take more intention. And so, the problem with what's happening is that we are kind of just feeling like we're working all the time. So we're spreading out tasks across a longer time horizon and feeling less productive as a result because we don't have time blocking strategies or productivity strategies. Or we are doing some of that, but we're taking on more and saying yes to everything and not setting boundaries because we work from home. And now we have 50 more things on our plate than we used to. And we're filling all of our time, but with stuff that we're not actually being paid to do. And so I think it's just really, really important to get clear on like what are the expectations of your role, like what are you being paid to do, and also how long does it actually need to take. And I would just challenge the belief that it's going to take a full 8-hour day to get something done for most people, like most, I will say. And I'm even talking to myself because I know that I take more time than I need to on a lot of things. So just some food for thought there.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about the person who, okay, maybe it is project based, but also they have a shit ton of meetings
Yeah.
and you can't get out of them. Like again, I have a client in particular that I'm thinking about, like her whole day is like almost like meetings talking about the work that they should be doing, but they don't have time to do it because they're in meetings. And yeah, it's great. Because I asked her, I was like, when do you actually work? She's like, that's a really good question.
God.
But it's nothing that she can do because she's not in that like managerial role, right? Like she's working underneath people and this is what they've set. But for her, like one of the things is like, okay, I really don't have a lot of time because I'm in all these meetings. So I don't have time to work. So I need to be efficient with the time that I do have. And so we kind of talked about like, okay, what are some meetings that you can get on your walking pad, right? Like there are some that you can't, like they need to be a little bit more professional, right? And everything. But if she's meeting with people underneath her, where she's like, okay, I can hop on my walking pad and I can get in, 3,000, 4,000 steps. And now I'm not like freaking out when I get off of work that I've only gotten, 1,000 and I have all this I need to make up on,
Yeah.
that she's able to kind of take advantage of that during the day. And so that's something that I recommend to everyone. If you are working from home or even if you're in an office, get a walking pad. Like,
Mhm.
because one meeting that you're on your pad for the entire, like that can be your steps for the day. And then you can go to the gym if you want. but you've gotten your movement in, and I'm like, capitalize on that while you were at work. So you don't have to do that on your personal time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess kind of like closing it all out, I do want to say like everyone's situation is very different. So like if anything that I said made you think like you don't get it, I actually have so much to do and I am productive and I still don't have any of this time. Those situations exist and I feel for you. And like, I mean, sometimes it is what it is. Maybe it's a conversation with your supervisors that like you need to get some more help in the company that you're in, or maybe it is a season. Maybe it is just what you signed up for and that is what it is. But I think just it's a general trend that I see that people are not as productive as they think and they don't set boundaries with themselves or respect their own time. And so, what I challenge you to do is, you can be mad at me all you want for any of this, but also just look internally at like, am I truly setting all these boundaries to the extent that it fully serves me and allows me to be productive? Am I truly advocating for myself in my workplace and like is there anything in that I could take like one thing to improve my quality of life or my boundaries? And baby steps, right? So you don't have to change everything overnight, but like we're doing this podcast to help y'all. And so after working with hundreds and hundreds of women who all work from home, like this is very common. And so I'm not going to take back what I said because I know that it happens. And sometimes we're not ready to hear it, but sometimes it's like, oh, that hit and I need help with this. And yeah, let me just see what I can do.
Yeah, yeah. So I think again, it's really important to try to set those boundaries based on your role and what is realistic for you. And then continuing that like self-care side of things. Whatever that looks like for you, if it is getting your nails done or taking time to like get out and go outside and go on walks or whatever that may be. But also like relaxation. So don't be like me checking your email or like whatever. It's like whatever helps you relax, like go ahead and do that. So for me, like instead of sitting down and watching TV, like for me, it's like I want to be very, very intentional when my son is awake. And so like after a certain amount of time, like after dinner and stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be on my phone until he goes to bed. So like we're going outside, we're getting, a walk in, we're getting movement, like I'm watching him and being very present. And that's actually relaxing to me because I'm like, I get to be fully immersed in him. And then when he goes to bed, okay, if I do have anything else I need to do, like I'm, getting a few things done here and there. Cause again, it is very different as a parent. But I do stuff like that. And that kind of helps with boundaries and makes me feel better. Like I'm not doing this when he's awake.
Yeah.
But that really helps as well. But I think it is really important to like still have those like whatever that is for you, if it's reading or if it's meeting up with friends, like you're still setting times to do those things. Because I feel like, again, that helps disconnect from work. It helps pull us out of that environment. And then the other thing I was thinking about is like, if you work from home, you're remote, like you have the capability to like go work at a coffee shop
Yeah.
or like go to a working space. So it's like you feel like you're removing yourself from your home and you're putting yourself in a different environment. And I know for a fact, like I felt way more productive when I was doing that than sitting at home when I actually had the ability to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Different season of life.
Yep.
But yeah, if you can like have that physical boundary of your environment, whether that's going out coffee shop or if it's an office at home too, or just a specific spot at the table, like that could also be the spot. But like mentally, when we have that designation for like this is my workspace, it is really, really helpful. And every now and again, it's nice to kind of just mix it up, work from the couch, do little things like to kind of change it up. Like I know I sometimes veer out of my office because I'm like, I'm so sick of this room. Like, let me get somewhere else. But at the same time, I think for the most part, hold your boundary and it's going to help you kind of clock in and clock out mentally.
Yeah. So again, everyone's situation is different, but we encourage you guys to like, okay, what are my own boundaries? What is important to me?
Yeah.
What do I feel like I can change? And again, not everything all at once, but little things here and there that might improve your work from home experience just a little bit. And I'd love if you guys would chime in and either share like tips or tricks or anything, or your experiences with implementing boundaries and what that looks like. And, we'd love to hear from you. And if there's anything that we can do, that would be great. But anyways, guys, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you turn back in next week. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit, and Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and hope to see you back next week.